Okay, John, do it. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See, all those years in school were not wasted.
I can't bring it up on my phone.
Okay, keep talking, John. I'm gonna see if,
Alrighty.
if you're coming through a little bit. Keep talking.
I would like to thank the men and women as caretakers of this building for allowing my use of it today. I would encourage the people hearing this talk to look at the sermon that was given today. It should be recalled while you hear my talk. The law today is quite often misunderstood for the sake of ignorance. Let's be educated. There, that sounds nice, doesn't it? We all need more education. To that end, I'll stay up here as long as it takes to educate my brothers and sisters. I would like to thank the men and women as caretakers of this building for allowing my use of it today. How are we doing? Are we getting close?
I can't find it here. Let's see here.
One cup is coffee and the other cup is water. So I can wash it down quickly.
Okay. Did you send a link on this thing? I don't think so. Where's the link on this thing? Yeah, because I usually send it from here. Okay, so. Where's the microphone? Is it on the?
It's on the camera.
So yeah, there is a microphone on the camera, and so the amp must be turned on because we're going to get a good sound here. I don't think we have a problem, guys.
John, consider yourself to be on in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're on. It's 3 minutes on the video. You're on now.
Alrighty, thank you very much. I would like to thank the men and women as caretakers of this building for allowing me to use it today. I would also encourage everyone hearing this talk to tune in to the sermon that was given today, as it is very pertinent. It should be recalled while you hear my talk, the law is quite often misunderstood currently as it was in the times of Jesus. So what we're trying to do is alleviate ignorance. So with that, let's be educated. Oh, this educational talk was first given January 19th, 2023, as a constitutional talk to the Eaton County Patriot Party in Eaton County. Good day to you all. My name is John Lucky. I hope that you have all had a good day, and now after you've eaten a little, you're ready for a little education. Bruce has let me know that it's best to keep my talk limited to no more than 3 hours, as people will tend to fall asleep after that. So I'll try to honor his wishes. Really, I'll start to ramble and repeat myself after about an hour, so we should be good. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I worked as an electrician and later as an electronics technician at the Lansing General Motors plant. As fate and our good Lord would have it, I've always been a very curious sort of person. I was one of the nerdy types, always wanted to know what makes things work, take things apart, and if I didn't have too many parts left over, then it was a success. If it was broken and it started to work, then it really was a success. Like Bruce and some others, I got my private pilot's license, got my scuba certificate, along with completing courses for my electronics degree. So what I'm saying is reading and studying is a way of life for me. When I got a ticket or two way back when, I started to get into the statutes. What did I do so wrong that got me a ticket? For slowing down, looking both ways, and as it was late at night with no traffic coming, making my turn or whatever other horrible thing along the same manner, to me, it should not have been a problem. I had the constitutionally protected rights granted to all of us by the federal Constitution of freedom to travel. Here, I'll show you what you would get if you Googled that. What does the Constitution say about travel or the right to travel? The right to travel is a part of the liberty in which the citizens cannot be deprived without due process of law under the Fifth Amendment. If that liberty is to be regulated, it must be pursuant to the lawmaking functions of Congress. So there you have it. All I had to do was explain to the nice judge that I was not endangering myself or anyone else on the road. Well, you all know the end of that story, so I'll skip to the next point. Over the course of the last 25 years or more, studying law and researching both the Constitution and the statutes were high on my list. Now, why didn't I just go to College of Law and get my education that way, you might ask? Something told me by then that there was a problem with the system. When I would ask why this is happening when it shouldn't, I would hear the old adage, you can't fight City Hall. Now, that to my young and tender mind, I just couldn't grasp. If we are the government and the government is us, how can we not win over our hired public servants to do what is right? It turns out that there was an answer to that question. It came from a talk show host a long time back by the name of Rush Limbaugh. I assume everybody will remember that name. He's noted for saying many things, but the one that stands out is follow the money. It turns out that when we elect people to serve us, most of them are, number one, ignorant, and number two, very much liking the money and control that their job provides. The money and control are easy to understand, so let's talk about the ignorance factor. When people run for office and they tell us all of the great things they're going to do for us, how many of us ask, how are they going to do those things? Once in a while, they quote some of the Constitution to us and tell us what we know, tell us what we already know, that things are wrong and they want us to elect them to office so they can fix them. Maybe you can think of a person that has run on that slogan. I will enforce the rule of constitutional law. I'm sorry, but I'm going to wait just a minute to see if anyone comes to anyone's mind. I can't recall anyone running on that. Okay, well, let's move on. We all pretty much have a little knowledge of the federal Constitution. It's written pretty plainly. We can read it if we take the time. But I'm thinking that we need to have a refresher on our Michigan State Constitution. I'm not going to embarrass anyone by asking, when was the last time that you read our law of the land? There is no doubt in my mind that when your kids were young and you had lots of time, you read it to them, along with all of the other great kids' stories you read to them. I am going to give each one of you some homework over the next few weeks as you get some time. Read the Michigan Constitution, and I'm here to guide you through some of the important parts. I know all of you are very proficient on your computers, be they laptops, tablets, or whatever. So go to your favorite search engine and just type in Michigan Constitution 1963. And there you go. I'll add here that it's not a bad thing to follow this up with a look at the other 3 past constitutions of Michigan. The first Constitution of Michigan was 1835. I was not there, so I'm just taking that on good advice. Then 1850, and then 1908, and now 1963. Keep in mind that the only reason for a constitution, it is a limitation on the authority of our public servants and their use of our governmental power to do the job they were hired to do. The first thing we're going to come across is the preamble. Here it is. State of Michigan, 1963 preamble. We, the people of the state of Michigan, grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. Now, let's take a moment to go over this. First, we the people. They are including all of the people, men and women. And towards the end, it says why they are joining together, creating this contract or trust. Grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom. This is a prayer acknowledging that God and the Bible is the source of our power and authority to create our organized government, which will provide 3 things found in Article 1, Section 1. Our equal benefit, our security, and protection. The protection is from those within our republic, not only by the bad guys, but also our elected officials and any others that would seek to harm us, and also from those outside of our state. I just mentioned our first Declaration of Rights within the Michigan Constitution, and you will find that at Article 1, Section 1. As I give these articles of our Constitution, it would be maybe a good idea to quickly bring up the Constitution and follow along with me. But here it is. Article 1, Section 1, called Political Power. All political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection. All political power is inherent in the people. I want this to sink in and resonate with us because we don't get told this. We should. This should be something our educational system drills into us. I'm sorry to report that that is not the case. What is the only power we, the people, let our public servants exercise? It's called political power. It is very limited by the Constitution. because we, the people, understand that government is like fire. It is a wonderful, it is wonderful when it is under control, but when it gets out of control, it consumes everything in its path. Only we, the people, retain the political power and authority to ourselves. Once again, expressed in Article 1, Section 1. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I can't say it too often. You've got to know it, live it, and believe it. Only we, the people, retain the political power and authority to ourselves to keep our government and our public servants within their duties as outlined within our Constitution. At this point, I need to ask, for the sake of any public servants that might be here or will view this educational series of talks, we have been programmed to believe that our elected officers have a tremendous amount of power, and in some situations they do. However, can a governor mandate to the people that they must stay in their house? Can a governor mandate that if someone leaves their house to get some groceries, that they should be arrested and put in jail? Or that they should be punished in some other way? Can any of our public servants, be they judges, legislators, county officials of any kind, issue an order or law or mandate that makes it a crime to not wear a mask when you go out of your house? Now, I will give you a minute to think about this, because if anyone wants to raise their hand and say yes to these questions, I will ask you to tell me, using the first article of our Constitution, where that power and authority is or would be found. I am now challenging your preconceived ideas that have been thrown at you and I since we were young. We have all been taught that we have no authority to challenge the authority of our state officials. Can the government violate the highest authority in our republic, even under the guise of protecting us from ourselves? If you think that, then I want to know this is your opinion. If you ever want to run for office, I'm sure that I do not want to vote for anyone that thinks the state is more important than the men and women that make up this state. I could give you so many examples of this kind of thinking that we could be here for several hours. I, on the other hand, trust each and every one of you that if I give you the best information available and make the suggestions as to how you should conduct yourself, you will make the best choice for you and your family. Now, this leads me to where I want to go. There are two main legislative acts that produce the most money and control to the state and agencies of our state. They are the Motor Vehicle Code and the Property Tax Act. Should we take a few minutes break here, or are we all good? I think we're good. Let me continue.
We're good. Pastor Paul says it's coming through just fine.
Excellent. Very good. We'll talk about the Motor Vehicle Code at a future meeting. So let's talk about the Michigan Property Tax Act. The legislators passed this act in 1893. I'm led to believe, I guess, according to the act. For your information, we are now leaving the Michigan Constitution and going into the Michigan Compiled Laws, also known as the MCLs. They are the statutes that the legislators enact as our hired servants to run our state. While our first constitution was enacted or decreed in 1835, we became a state in 1837. We did not get any statutes until the revised statutes of 1846.
And a statute is,
A statute is an enactment by public servants. It's not a law. It is not a constitutional law. It's not a common law. Anytime we're talking about the statutes, the proper terminology by our attorneys, by our judges, by our elected officials of any and every kind should be prefaced with, this is a statutory law, not a law that can be used against the people. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I like to sometimes dwell on, give some extra attention to that. So, very few people know what common law is because our elected officials are ignorant to what it is, and so they cannot educate us what they don't know. Only what is known as common law was the law of the land until the statutes were codified 11 years after our Constitution.
I'd like to correct you on something. Okay? It'll take a couple minutes.
Okay, if you want to, let's just continue. We'll get back to that, unless it's something to do with the recording, John.
Okay.
One question that gets asked is, how do I know if I'm charged with a common law violation or a statutory law violation? Good question. If you are charged with a statutory violation, you will see the term MCL before a set of numbers, those being the numbers of the statute. You don't have to worry about being charged with common law, as you are not considered to be a man or woman in this state.
oh no. Here we go.
Don't believe me? Well, hang on to your seat. First, let me get back to my topic, the Property Tax Act. Now, the intent of the legislators is to confuse and obfuscate, so you will not understand what you are reading. I know, because it has taken myself and some very intelligent men and women years to decode what I am going to show you. Every act must have an enactment clause to tell the reader why it is needed. Here is the enactment clause for the Tax Act. The General Property Tax Act, Act 206 of 1893, an act to provide for the assessment of rights and interests, including leasehold interests in property and the levy and collection of taxes on property, and for the collection of taxes levied, making those taxes a lien on the property tax, establishing and continuing the lien, providing for the sale or forfeiture and conveyance of property delinquent for taxes, and for the inspection and disposition of lands bid off to the state and not redeemed or purchased, to provide for the establishment of a delinquent tax revolving fund, and for the borrowing of money by counties and issuance of notices, to define and limit the jurisdiction of the courts. It goes on for another 3 or 4 sentences. Believe me, if you can't sleep, I encourage you to go to the Michigan statutes and begin reading like I have done many hours in the past. And believe me, you will not only educate yourself, but you will fairly quickly be put to sleep. Now here we see there is a Property Tax Act. We need to see the details of the act. That is the who, what, where, when, and why. And the why is in the enactment clause. So we know why we have a tax. They basically, we go to Rush Limbaugh here, it's follow the money. It's all about the money, folks. Now, here is the what of the act. The General Property Tax Act, excerpt, Act 206 of 1893, MCL 211.1, if you want to Google it and follow along. It's called the property subject to taxation. Section 1, that all property, real and personal, within the jurisdiction of the state, not expressly exempted, shall be subject to taxation. Now, this is one of the few sections of code that have a constitutionality clause. They want you to believe that Article 1 or Section 1 of this act is constitutional. So I'm going to read that and then we'll come back to it. Constitutionality, mailing of tax delinquency and redemption notices to a corporation at its tax address of record is in the manner required by the General Property Tax Act is sufficient to provide constitutionality adequate notice. And then they give a court site, Smith versus Cliffs on the Bay Condominium Association. I will guarantee you that Cliffs on the Bay Condominium Association is a corporation. It was asked permission to exist by the state legislature. And it's located at the court citation is located at 463 Mish 420 617 536, and it was a decree by a court in 2000. So compiler's notes for prior tax years, see note to this section in the Michigan Compiled Laws of 1970. And the popular name of the act is Act 206. Let's get back to, here is why in the best interest of the few state officials that place the state above the men and women of this state. Now, I went into a fairly long story about who is the master and who is the public servants within our state. The men and women known as we the people are the owners and masters of our state, or also known as our republic. Remember, the federal Constitution guarantees to every state to be a republican form of government, not a democracy, but a representative republic. Little side note here. Two wolves and a sheep are sitting down to decide what to eat. In a democracy, the two wolves would win the vote. In a republic, the sheep is armed and we don't vote on certain things. I hope this gives you an idea of what the difference is between a democracy and our republic. A democracy is mob rule. 51% of the people tell the 49% what to do. Now, back to the Decoding the Property Tax Act. Once again, we must take it apart to understand what it is saying and what it must be saying to be constitutional. Phrase by phrase, we can see the following. I start out with that all property. To the uneducated ear and eye, it would sound as if all property in this state is taxable. I will tell you that is incorrect. It should have said that certain property is taxable. Now, the next phrase is real and personal. Look up these words in your dictionary. Real is something that you can touch, and personal is something of the person. It could be your personal watch, your personal pencil, your personal coat. It does not say your real land. It says property. As we are within the statutes, when the word person is used, it must be understood that it means a statutory person, because it's a statutory tax. Next phrase, within the jurisdiction of this state. Now here is where, once again, we must use reason and logic to understand what is being said. What does our state legislatures have jurisdiction over? Well, they have jurisdiction over our public property. We do not give them jurisdiction over our private property. See Article 1, Section 1. I hope you're not getting bored with that. The Creator has full authority and control over his creation, and not the other way around. They would like you to think, as well as all of our city and public or county public servants, that they can order you around. I can find nowhere within the Constitution that makes that possible. Next phrase, not expressly exempted. This is really what I call the loophole, in that it makes it seem like we are being done a favor. Well, of course, we all know that within the statutes, our legislators do exempt some types of property. Property belonging to the aged, educational property, schools, that of a military disabled veteran, etc. But here is a recent revelation. Article 3, Section 7 says there are two different separate styles of law: the common law and the statutory laws. So if this is the case, then there must also be two areas of law that contain exemptions that our ignorant public servants are unaware of and are using our logical reasoning again. You guessed it, our good friend, that First Amendment, Article 1, Section 1, tells us that we are the masters and our servants cannot in any way interfere with our private life, liberty, or property. Last phrase, shall be subject to taxation. I will assure you that whatever is left from this enactment that meets with the statutes actually can be subject to taxation. I will also point out that in the bottom of the text of the act is something of note, and we do find one thing here. It gives something called history, and then it gives something called constitutionality. Remember, I read that from the enactment. I'm going to read it again. Constitutionality. So what makes this enactment constitutional? Mailing of tax discrepancies and redemption notices to a corporation at its tax address of record in the manner required by the General Property Tax Act is sufficient to provide constitutionality adequate notice. And once again, it was a court case, Smith versus Cliffs on the Bay. Now, let's break this down. We're having fun here, right, everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is truly a legalism. That is, it is worded in such a way that unless you can decode a legal document, then you are really at a loss to understand what is being said here. Now, nowhere have I said that the statutory property tax is not legal to enforce upon corporations. A corporation asks the state to exist. A corporation is a creation of the state, as much as the state is a creation of ours. Let me repeat that. We, as men and women under Article 1, Section 1, created the government which created the state. we can discuss semantics here a little bit, but let that sink in. That means our government is subservient to us and not the other way around. When a court rules that notice to a corporation is constitutional, then what they are really saying is that a notice to a private man or woman is not constitutional. Let's think about this. How can a county tax assessor not know that we are men and women and exempt from any statutory tax? Well, you have not told them by way of this document that I am delivering to you. You didn't know it. You're now being told. When you go home and look at your last property tax notice, sorry about that, it will have your name in all capital letters.
Yes, it will.
That is the style of a corporation. Remember, I told you, you are not a man and woman in the eyes of the statute. You are how can I put this politely? A sheep to be sheared of the state. Look at your driver's license. Once again, it is in the style of a corporation. I'd have to laugh if this was not so serious because of not only your ignorance, but theirs also. We have lost our humanity and been turned into legal entities called corporations. And a corporation is really just a legal fiction. It exists on paper only. What other tidbits can we find within the Tax Act to convince us that we are on the right track? The who that is made liable is a good place to go. The statutes hold the person liable for the tax. I have found that for the legislators to try to be not liable for their misunderstanding or held liable for their misunderstanding of the ignorance of our public servants that administer the statutory code, they must redefine some words of art that are different than in common usage. The word person is one of those words. We find some of these redefined words within the Act, within the first 5 to 10 sections of most acts. In the case of the Property Tax Act, we see at MCL 211.9N and MCL 211.90 such a situation. Here are the sections of code that I am referring to. MCL 211.9N, qualified previously existing personal property. Exemptions, contain documents, requirements, denial of claim, books and records, fraudulent claim. Something called definitions. Section 9N, subsection B. I believe someone actually was following me a couple days ago and let me know that it should be section 4, then subsection B. So be advised that may be where you need to look. Person means an individual, a partnership, a corporation, an association, limited liability company, or any other legal entity. Remember, when you see or hear the word individual, what should we ask? We know that the word is an adjective. It describes how many of something, and it is not a noun, as the statute would have us believe. We can logically reason that because it is always used in connection with legal entities such as partnerships, corporations, associations, companies, etc., that it also denotes a legal entity and is not to be inferred as being a man or a woman. If that is what the statute writers wanted to say, it would have been very easy to just say man or woman as who is liable. Notice they didn't say man or woman. Man or woman is not liable, and man and woman's private property is not liable. Here's another statute that defines the word person. To 11.90, eligible personal property. Remember, personal does not mean a man and woman's private property. It means of the person, which is defined right here when we define person. Exemption statements, books and records, audit programs, filing rescissions and statements. If property no longer is eligible, denial of claim for exemption, fraudulent claims, penalties. Oops, guess what? Here's one more. Says they're going to describe something called definitions. If you go down to section 9.0, person means, oops, once again, individual, partnership, corporation, association, limited liability company, or any other legal entity. How many of you, in thinking about this now, can raise your hand and prove in a court of law that you are a person in the statutes? Because remember, each one of these now are elements of the crime of being liable. So when the nice tax assessor or the nice county treasurer takes you to court, according to due process, which you can find at Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 17, due process says that they have to prove which one you control, which property you control. Are you a individual partnership? Are you an individual corporation? Are you an individual association? Are you an individual limited liability company? Just what other legal entity are you? Only, let's see here, only we the people that, I think I should have numbered these. Just give me just a minute. The revised statutes, let's see, we are still, I think that is basically going to be, I'm missing one or two pages here that I would like to refer to. But I think that gives everybody a good idea of where we're going, and I think I've taken up enough of your time. So, there was a question and answer period when I gave the talk at the Eden County Patriots, and it was a couple interesting ones. If anybody has any questions, leave comments here on YouTube, and we'll try to get back to them. So, with that being said, thank you very much for your attendance and your attention, and may God bless us. Thank you. All righty, Tom, you can end it.
Maybe we can go get some lunch.
The difference between be it enacted and be it resolved, that's what you would find. Okay.
Tom, I appreciate that information, but it is so extraneous to the subject that it would have interrupted the flow. I kind of knew where you were going with that. Remember that there are some situations where that would be pertinent when something is being summarized. The only thing that's pertinent is a falsehood. Did I give a falsehood in your mind? What was the falsehood, Tom?
That, well, that's like, that's part of what needs to be cleaned up, is that you said it was prepositioned with something that it wasn't prepositioned with.
No, Tom, in the statute is called an enactment.
Yeah,
That's why I use the word enactment,
Mhm.
okay? Be it resolved would be a federal statute.
right, but it also starts out with be it enacted.
You're talking about Title 26 of the federal code. We're not in Title 26, Tom, of the federal code.
The state does the same thing.
No, they don't, not in the Property Tax Act. Please read it, okay? Because I'm getting just a little bit irritated now. You've told me that I committed a falsehood. Tom, you're wrong, okay?
All right.
Now, in telling me I committed a falsehood, you've actually just committed a falsehood.
Okay.
I would appreciate your apology.
If I'm wrong, I apologize.
That's all I can ask for. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so go back to like the first, when you explain the driver's license having all capitals and that makes you a corporation, not a person.
Correct,
You're
and
a
I've
person.
got that,
I was trying to explain this, I can't remember to who.
yeah.
And I said, you know, look at your driver's license, it's all capitals, it's this, it's that. And they were like,
They do, because we're ignorant. They do a good job of keeping us ignorant. Sally, where that goes is if you go to the Michigan Motor Vehicle Code, and Tom, this is for you also. I am very, very well read, okay? I've been studying this, maybe not as long as Tom, but probably, maybe Tom has forgotten more than I even know.
okay.
But as far as current information, I am very well read. I
Because
can quote the statutes, I can quote the Constitution. At MCL 257.40 in the Motor Vehicle Code, it's like they define the person just like the Property Tax Act does. The person in the Motor Vehicle Code, the corporation, is called a natural person, a firm, a co-partnership, an association, or a corporation. That is what is a person. Every time that motor vehicle patrol officer issues a ticket, supposedly, if he was being constitutional and providing due process, he would have to tell you which one of those things you are and prove it in court. Now, you just jumped in your car, you went to the grocery store to get some groceries.
Yeah.
You're not in business, you're not acting as a corporation. You are now an Article 1, Section 1 woman, owner of this state and his boss. How often do you think he gives his boss a ticket? If he knew who his boss was, I'm thinking he wouldn't do it very often.
Yeah.
Now tomorrow, I'm gonna keep cutting you off for just a minute.
Okay.
Tomorrow, me and a gentleman that got a ticket for going to the MGJA meeting last Saturday or Sunday, Tom?
Saturday.
Thank you. That's right, second Saturday of the month. County sheriff pulled him over just
You were telling us this,
a couple hundred feet from,
like he was watching for it.
you know, I am now thinking that that is a speed trap area. Yes, I think I'll bring that to the county prosecutor's attention tomorrow. So tomorrow we get to go and I'm going to explain to the nice county prosecutor that him and his officer are in deep trouble. Because I have permission now to take this to this will go quickly. We started circuit court. This will go quickly if they want to play this game. This will go quickly to our state Supreme Court. They've already ruled on this in 2021.
Wow.
It's called Owens versus Saranac or Owens versus State of Michigan.
Okay.
And the officer violated his federal Fourth Amendment Constitution and the Michigan Constitution at Article 1, Section 11.
Well,
It's
I
called search
remember,
and seizure.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I remember when I was in the Secretary of State office, getting my driver's license and car license renewed, and this was pre-COVID.
Mhm.
But you had given us this whole, and you know, it goes in and sometimes it settles and sometimes I can feel it back out again. But what I remember was the discussion with several of the people also waiting, that by your name being all capitals, that you are not an individual, you are a corporation.
Yes.
And that you should ask at the counter if you can have your name put in small letters.
They won't do it.
And I said, I'm going to ask that again today, but I said they won't do it
They
because
can't.
I know. And so this was a discussion, and the lady behind the counter was like E.F. Hutton, you know,
Yeah.
and she was just so amazed. And she says, ma'am, I was trying to look at her, and she says, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I said, what am I doing? Do you want me to sit in a different seat? She says, no, I want you to go out the door.
Yeah.
And I said,
You just told her you're not a corporation. They can only give driver's licenses to corporations.
I said, and that the reason behind this is, she says, you are starting to stir up the people. And we can't have that here.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
I said to these 6 or 7 people, am I stirring you up or am I educating you? You know, I mean, are you wanting to learn more about this? Well, how do you know this? Well, I have a friend who has studied the law. He's a common law lawyer. And I said, he knows this. I can give you his address. I can give you his phone number. You know, I said, he's a real cool guy. He knows these things. And she says, ma'am, you need to be quiet right now. And I said, you know what? I am not going to be quiet. Because I said, there's something called freedom of speech.
Yeah. Did you know, you could have told her this, but did you know that you own that building? That's a
No.
private property, or that's
I did
not
not.
private property, it's a public building that you own.
Yeah, I did not get into that with her. But, you know, suddenly my number was called ahead of, you know, they must have seen my little tab because they wanted me out of it.
Yeah.
And as I left, I said, look it up, Michigan Constitution, look it up, folks, educate yourself. You're done, ma'am, leave.
Where did they find you?
Secretary of State's office.
For what?
For daring to say that by your driver's license having all capitals, that you were a corporation, not a person. You were no longer a person. We're all corporations sitting here.
Sign your driver's license in all caps. That's what he taught me.
And by her speaking up like that, she was actually violating your rights, committed federal crime.
She was denying your First
But I
Amendment.
mean, this lady
freedom of
was
speech.
she was just,
She-
when I
she
said
was-
it's called freedom of speech, ma'am.
She was making herself personally liable for her actions.
And because, it was really funny because she was at the end of the counter. You know how the counter is like down there in Mason where it's a big long counter.
Right.
And she was at the end of the counter, so she must have had some clout.
Yeah.
But the person from the back office came when they were hearing this, and came all the way around and were talking to her, and the person from the back office and then she was attacking me for, you need to leave, you need to leave.
They were committing conspiracy to commit fraud.
Wow,
If you don't know your rights, you don't have any.
yeah. Well, I mean, and it was so funny because as I was leaving, I said, look it up. Y'all have computers, y'all have phones.
Tell
Look it
you
up.
are a special girl.
And I thought, you could call my friend John.
They were making themselves personally liable for violating the law. And if you gave due notice of that, if they would have continued, you could own their houses.
Next time you do something like that, take him to John Wick. He will back you.
Well, you know, On a personal note,
Either you're right or they're right.
on a personal note,
Yes,
Charlie and I are delinquent in our property taxes.
yeah.
And
now what
we got
I'm-
this, and it's a letter we have to go to the post office and sign for.
What I would encourage you to do is, in some way, shape, or form, get this talk, which
Yeah,
Tom and I will get on YouTube, so it's gonna be
It's
available.
already there.
It's already on.
Great, there you go. So see if we can get our, I want every county treasurer in the state of Michigan, all 83 counties, to have watched this. Put them on notice. This is gonna be a hot,
You were being recorded live. That means you're on.
oh, well, there you go. Thank you very much. So what I'm saying is, I am in the process of turning this talk into a court case that will be filed sometime in the next month or two. I'm working with a couple legal people up in Elma. And it's gonna, the first county it's gonna be filed is Hillsdale County. I'm
I
gonna
wish
take
you could,
down,
I wish you could get into several of the high schools
if,
around,
if
into
all
the
I
government
will,
class,
I
into the,
will, yes.
you know.
And that's what I'm asking people now. I will go into, this coming week, I will go into Lansing and start talking to pastors. I want to start giving this talk and educating people of their rights, because.
Have you talked to the pastor at the First Baptist Church in Charlotte, where I'm going for this American Heritage Girls now?
Yeah.
They are a very, very active church. They are a very, very doing church for the community.
Charlie, what you got?
This is my ID card, I don't have driver's license.
Okay,
Up there, right above my picture, it says, not for federal identification. I
right.
never noticed that on there before.
Yeah, no, that's true. Now, the reason that that's important nowadays is because some people who pay extra can have their identification card treated like a passport, and you can go in and out of Canada with it.
Right.
Yours can't, and mine can't either, because I didn't pay that extra. I don't feel I need to, for one. So that's the deal there.
So like, we would have to, need to get renewed this year.
Oh, okay.
It's our renewal, so when we go in, we don't sign it, we print our name, right?
That's what I would, I print mine, I can show it to you, I print mine in all capital letters, and I follow the format that they showed you right here. I just print it just like they're showing you.
I don't
How they
print it out
want
in
it.
lowercase.
No, it's all capitals, because what that does, Charlie, is it holds the corporation that they made you, it separates you from that legal entity.
Okay.
So in effect, it follows up their, I'm gonna tell you something right now, and they probably have it corrected now. When I got mine, mine I think has gotta be renewed next year. I think they're good for what, 5 years, something like that, 4?
Yeah, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
whatever.
so, when I went to the counter and filled out all my paperwork, she saw me. You can't write your name like that. I says, what do you mean? She wrote, you've got to sign your name. I said, I just signed it. Because look how you got it on my old driver's license. I'm doing exactly what you did. And she was so frustrated, she didn't know what to say. So I think, if I'm recalling correctly, she went into the back room where the manager is, come right back out. Yes, sir, okay. So,
They didn't want to mess with you like they didn't want to mess with me that day.
yeah, I think. What do you think, Carol? Was it interesting? All righty, that's good. Well, I appreciate you guys. It's nice to even have a few people. I will tell you, were you at the,
No, that was a bad day for me.
Okay.
We didn't go.
we had a good showing. We had about 40 people there.
In that room?
Yes. And I'm
Wow.
gonna tell you that you would have thought, I kept looking at, I'm really bad at that because I don't memorize this stuff. I just have to, I want to read it off of a piece of paper so I know I'm getting it correct.
You could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah, I looked out into that room periodically and it was like I was giving them next week's lotto numbers. They were, it's like,
Well, the day that lady was there with all those little booklets that she had handmade and sewed together and all those kind of things, and then you popped up and you gave a spiel, everybody was like, because we sit with you and by
we thought you were just one of us.
yeah, you were just thought you were just a regular normal guy,
Yeah, Chrissy
not
does,
have all this knowledge.
Chrissy does a good job, but she is not trained. I told her I would love to get a couple hours with her. I could train her how to give a proper presentation, but she is.
She's
under the
got
impression-
such a big heart.
Yeah, she's a really nice girl. She's under the impression that she knows it, so she's good. But when people ask her questions, she knows how to give her talk, but she doesn't know enough, she doesn't have enough depth to answer the questions.
Right.
Tom, I am sorry about
What are we doing
getting
for lunch?
unleashing on you. I've been under a lot of stress here the last 2 weeks. So just give me some, when I see somebody do that, and I'm gonna give you here's a hint of what to watch for. And a couple other people have made this comment. I've tried to correct it at the meetings we go to, but when you find minutia like that, it's like, I want to be, it's like you have a low self-esteem and I want to be recognized. You're too intelligent for that, huh?
No, that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to clarify the wording.
Yeah, but you were talking one thing and I'm talking something else.
Well,
Understand, that is the case.
What are we doing for lunch?
And in fact,
I'm gonna keep
in
asking.
some
in
circles,
my mind, it's important to understand the difference between an act and law.
Everybody.
And
no
I'm not-
legislative body can make law.
I understand that.
Okay.
But the wording is also highly important on that issue, because one is be it resolved, and Michigan doesn't use that.
Find that for me. Okay.
What are we doing for lunch? What
Uh,
are we doing for lunch?
Well, now we're.
And I don't want you to say eating it.
I'm waiting for, Charlene to give me my. What does Charlene want to do right now? Yes. You can, if we can get this to this may go all the way to the federal Supreme Court.
You can